Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan McGuire, and I'm Director of Professional Development at ACCE. We're really happy to have all of you here this afternoon. So we're going to tell the story of the Conway Area Chambers and how it pivoted after its iconic community festival, Toadstock Days, had to be canceled during COVID. The Chamber lost no time in taking action to retain much of the sponsorship income associated with the event, and it brought other Chamber events virtual in a very successful way. Chamber President and CEO Brad Lacey, CCE, and Chief Revenue Officer Lindsay Henderson will provide lessons in being nimble and inventive to maintain event profitability and positive relationships with community partners. So before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping reminders. First, attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. Second, after the presentation, you'll be able to ask questions using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand side of your webinar panel. You can type in your question at any time during the presentation. When it comes to you, you don't have to wait till the end, but then at the end, I'll take all the questions, I'll read them to Brad and Lindsay, and they'll answer. They also have their contact information on the last slide, so if you would prefer to chat with them afterwards offline, you can do that as well. If you ask a question in the webinar panel and we don't get to it, we will get back to you. The presentation slides are uploaded on the handout part of the webinar panel, so you can go ahead, open that up and download it now. I'm also recording the webinar, so I will post the recording and the slides on our webinar page, and they should be up tomorrow or Friday at the latest. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers today. Brad Lacey has served as the President and CEO of the Conway Development Corporation, the City of Conway's nonprofit economic development entity, since 2000. And then in December 2006, Brad became President and CEO of the Conway Area Chamber of Commerce. It marked the first time in nearly 2 decades that the Chamber and CDC have been under the leadership of the same person. The combined management of both organizations brings the city a larger staff to focus on economic development activities. In 2013, the Conway Area Chamber of Commerce was named an ACCE Chamber of the Year, and it was a runner-up in 2018. Brad holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Central Arkansas and a Master of Public Administration from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. Brad's a graduate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute of Organization Management, and he is a certified chamber executive. Brad's a former member of the University of Central Arkansas Board of Trustees, and he served 2 terms on the Board of Regents for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce West Institute of Organization Management. So welcome, Brad, and thank you for being with us today. Then, as Chief Revenue Officer for the Conway Area Chamber, Lindsay Henderson manages more than $1 million in sales. Lindsay began working for the Chamber in September 2010 as Director of Membership Services. She was promoted to Vice President of Membership Services in 2012 and became Chief Operating Officer in 2013 and then Chief Revenue Officer in 2016. Lindsay holds a bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Central Arkansas. She's also a graduate of the Faulkner County Leadership Institute, Leadership Arkansas, and the U.S. Chamber's Institute of Organization Management. Lindsay's serving on the Conway Corporation and Arkansas Economic Developers and Chamber Executives Board of Directors, and she was recognized as an Arkansas Business 40 Under 40 in 2017 and an ACCE 40 Under 40 in 2019. So welcome, Lindsay. Thank you, both of you, for being with us today, and I will hand the presentation over to you now.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're happy to be with everybody today. These are certainly challenging times, and I think if we look at the first slide here, we were trying to think of where to start. And so Lindsay, you want to go to the,
Yep.
There we go. So we thought back about how great the year started. So this is a picture of our team on our staff retreat in Atlanta on February 12th. And you can see we're also happy. We're having a great time. We were on track to really have a record year because we do most of our sponsorship solicitation and fundraising late in the prior year or very early in the current year. So we were really on track to have a record year. We had incredible economic development prospect activity. It was just a crazy first 2 months. We had done a lot of strategic planning at that retreat and started dreaming about what's next for us. Even talked about hiring new positions and things like that. So you can see how happy we were there. So as Lindsay goes to the next slide, this may look like your team now. March 17th, we closed our offices and picked up really a virtual office situation, which lasted for a while, and we're still sort of quasi virtual at times, although most of us are in the office most of the time now. For us, the hard thing was March is the low cash point for us in our year, and it in a normal year would change very quickly because we have several events that occur mid-March to mid-May that represent well over $1 million in revenue. And so, you know, that sort of went away. At least that was sort of the first thought that we might have. But then in order to survive, really, and not lay anyone off or cut positions or furlough or whatever, we sort of decided to fight, I guess, and we pivoted and began to get creative on how to deliver content that we would normally do in an event setting in a virtual way or in a different way. And so we wanted to get into some of that with you today. And obviously we had to move pretty quickly on some of this. So we sort of developed a new model, and I would say we're still developing that model. The calendar that we had set for ourselves last year obviously is just out the window, and every day is a little bit different, as I'm sure it is for all of you. And so, Lindsay, next slide. So the first event that we were able to fully execute virtually was Academic Signing Day. Now, this is an event that we've done for several years. We recognize the academic all-stars in the community. And so these are not just honor graduates. They are National Merit finalists or semifinalists. They are kids that get appointed to a military academy, kids that get a governor's distinguished scholarship. So they're very, very high performing. And usually that had been done in person with an event where the parents, family members are there, the students are recognized one at a time. They walk up on stage, tell a very little about themselves, where they're going to college, and then they physically sign a board that makes it sort of this signing day. And so as we started dreaming about, you know, could we still execute that? What we found out is that there is an appetite in our community for local content that is good, and it's sort of good news focused. I think everyone has fatigue with everything else that you hear with coronavirus. And so we pivoted on this and did it as a televised event. So we bought time on the CBS, the Little Rock CBS affiliate. I think it was, Lindsay, was it like a 6:30 on a Saturday night, I think? It's about a 30-minute time slot. And what we allowed the students to do was to film a short piece on themselves. You can see there that revenue was actually greater this year than it was last year. And I think that's because we also had businesses that wanted to do something good for the community. We recognized 34 student scholars that evening, and obviously that was content that then we shared on our website, that we shared on our Facebook page. Our local cable provider, ran it on public access. And I think next year what we have learned is that there were elements of this that were more successful and probably more creative than anything we had done in the past. The student videos were exceptional. And I think that we'll retain some things even when we get to go back to a live event. So that was the first sort of successful one that we did. And then the next slide. Outlook Conway. So this was another one that we had never sort of envisioned as a virtual event. This is an economic forecasting event that we do every year in May. You can see that in 2019 we did almost 60,000 in revenue. This is normally a half-day event with a lunch component to it. We focus on 4 specific areas of the local economy and do what we call a deep dive into that. And very successful. People like the event. So as we began to think about, could we do this in a different way, we decided that we could offer all of it online. Lindsay, I'll let you talk about how we delivered it. But what I want to say that I think we learned from this is we were able to get higher caliber speakers in some cases by doing it this way than had we done it normally. So we had 2 national economists that volunteered their time for free for us. And we had sessions with both of them. That would not have been something that we would have been able to execute in person. We wouldn't have been able to afford it probably. And then asking them to be away from their normal job for a couple of days, as you know, can be somewhat challenging. So again, I think from this, we learned that even when we go back to an in-person event, there may be components of it that we do virtually as a part of a bigger package. So Lindsay, you want to talk about sort of how we plug the sponsors in and how we delivered the content to people?
Yeah, just so real quickly, as if you look at the slides, you'll see that we had 10 individual virtual sessions that we delivered over the course of a 3-day period. And so typically someone, if they were going to sit through this module, as we called it, for any period of time, they might be there for 2.5 to 3 hours. And so they had the flexibility of being able to stop and resume as their schedule would allow. In addition to, if they signed up for this, they would have access to the content for 2 weeks from that point. And so again, more flexibility and the ability also to bring other people in to watch this, if not gathered collectively like we would have done in a typical year. And then in terms of how we plugged in sponsors, I will say that a lot of our sponsors at the top level that participated really believe in the mission of our organization and in this program. And so selling the event wasn't as hard because they know the importance of what this event means for our community and really our region. And so but we still want to provide deliverables to them. And so what we would do is, for example, allow each of our top level sponsors to provide a brief commercial that we would show every day when someone would log on. They would get their reminder about logging on to the Outlook Conway event. And then the first thing you would see is a commercial from Centennial Bank, who is the underwriter of Outlook Conway. And so there was a message from them. And then we would intertwine our presenting sponsors into the message delivery of the content that was going to happen for that particular day. So if, for example, we were talking about education and construction, then our presenting sponsor would lead into that conversation by kind of foreshadowing what was going to take place. And so we've had nothing but positive feedback about that. And in some ways, the sponsors really liked that, I think, a little better than maybe what we would have done previously. And then also, we had the ability to capture more eyeballs than we would have been able to with a live event. I mean, there's nothing that can replace a live event, especially with this one, in my opinion. But because of the way we were able to deliver this, we could bring more people to the table, per se, here with this than being limited by seating capacity as we would have been in the past.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So another one that we have coming up that we've completely sort of done a pivot, and we're assuming that we get approved. I don't think we've gotten approval yet, maybe from the state health department, but we're assuming we will. Normally, we have 3 colleges in our community, and the largest, the University of Central Arkansas, is has a big football program. We are a big sort of traditional football school. And so we have done an event for several years that we call Purple Passion, that kicks off football season, that allows the community to come meet the team, hear from the coach. We do a lot of activities around that. And so this is sort of like one of our business after hours, if you will. Obviously, because of social distancing and the virus, we can't do it like we normally would. So again, we have pivoted, and what our plan is that this is the, I believe it's the 25th anniversary of Remember the Titans. And so we are proposing to do a movie, to actually show the movie on the big screen in the football stadium. We have asked for, is it 15% capacity? Is that right, Lindsay? On the stadium, which I think is like 1,700 or 2,000 people. So we've asked for an event that would allow us to bring that many people into the stadium. So imagine that you're socially distancing people in the stadium on both sides and also on the field itself. There'll be seating on the field. Even some of the tailgating spots outside of the stadium are in play, and the sky boxes are in play for some of the sponsors. And so our goal is to do an outdoor movie night in the stadium, still give the coach and the university and the players the spotlight occasionally in the evening, and then deliver on the sponsor commitments through advertising or whatnot. Again, you'll see there, last year we did 13,000 in revenue. Today we have almost 24,000 in revenue committed to it. And some of that, as you'll see, is redirecting sponsor investment that may have been pledged to another event that we're not certain that we can deliver with the new guidelines. So we are still in this process of being creative and trying to figure out how to deliver things a little bit differently. Next slide.
I'd like to add something just really quickly. I think it also goes back to something Brad alluded to earlier, and how we ask for money as an organization. So typically the first 2 quarters for us, the sales team is asking for commitments for all of our events, for publications or programming for the whole year. And so as we would and we are approaching each event that we feel comfortable in being able to execute and are approved to execute, if we had already asked a sponsor, I would say pre-COVID, if they were committing and they had agreed, we are going back to them again to say, this is the new format with which we're going to conduct this event. Are you still on board? And so, as Brad was mentioning, with redirecting the funds, in one case, in this particular event, for example, we moved $5,000 from an event that is scheduled to happen in October. However, we don't know what October will look like. And instead of possibly losing that investment of $5,000, we asked them if they would consider investing in this event that we hope and feel pretty certain about happening. And so that just helps add to, again, our total bottom line for events.
And just another point on that, a lot of people will prepay, and so we have just checked with our CFO, we have $122,000 in our what we call our blueprint account. So it's sort of like an escrow account that we would hold those sponsorships in that people prepay for. And so that money is out there, and we're going to do our best not to lose that, and create opportunities for people that match up, even if it might not be what they originally thought. Let's go on to the next one. Lindsay, you want to take this one?
Sure. So, my goodness, we have done this event for more than a decade now, and it is very, very profitable for us. As you can see, in 2019, we brought in $40,000 of revenue. We were on track to exceed that, but again, as all of you are experiencing, things have changed. However, I'm very pleased with where we are right now. We had to pivot and do some things differently, and so instead of hosting an on-site event where we would have anywhere from 500 to 700 educators on site for a teacher's breakfast and education fair, we are now going to be delivering gift bags to all of the educators within our school system. So that would include three districts: Conway Public School, and then 2 private, smaller K-12 systems. And so that means actually more hands will receive the bag than they might have received in the previous event. And so that's one of our selling points to our sponsors, is that we are hopefully ensuring that every educator that works at that school will receive this bag. And so a sponsor or a participant can participate by putting a coupon. Teachers like crafty things to use in their classroom: pencils, pens, crayons, rulers. Those are some of the things we've typically seen them passing out at this live event, but instead we are asking them to the sponsors to put something in this bag that we will deliver. Additionally, what our plans are, as you can see from the name of the event, it was a breakfast, so the educators would come and they would eat on site, but now we are working with a local restaurant, Chick-fil-A actually, and they are providing breakfast for each of the schools. And so the chamber staff and the major sponsors will be invited to take breakfast to the educators on a specific date. And then how we're trying to engage the sponsor that participates in the bag with the educator is doing some things through social media. So they will collectively use a common hashtag. And so the sponsors who sign up to participate in Teachers Breakfast will use that hashtag to do drawings, because that's very big. That's something that's been very big that we have seen with this event. And so they'll use the hashtag to at random pick a winner of an educator who has also responded via the hashtag. And ideally what we're wanting the educators to do is to look through their bag of goodies and then post something on social media about what a great gift that we received from Walmart, for example. And then so Walmart would see that and maybe provide them with a gift, and that's really up to the business. But this event was too profitable for us not to do it. And so again, had to be creative. As you can see, our expenses are hovering around the same, and that's largely every year we do bags for this event. So again, we're doing bags, we're just having to do more. So that's where some of the more expense might be coming from, but that we're pretty conservative on expenses. So I always tell them, give me the higher number, because I'd rather come in under that. So I really anticipate that we might be where we with what we budgeted. But again, we're very pleased. A lot of the revenue that we're seeing from this event, again, is coming from some of our major sponsors. So presenting sponsor and the breakfast sponsors, and then $300 to participate as a vendor. That's the minimum that you can pay to get in. But we're seeing small businesses take advantage of that.
All right, move on to the next one. I think we're getting into Toadstock Days next. Yeah, so I'll give you a little overview on the festival if you're not familiar with it. So it's really the biggest event that we do. It's the biggest free festival in the state. The name is unique, and that is another session for another day. But in a normal year, we would do a little over $600,000 in revenue for the weekend. We have over 100,000 people that come to town. It's always the first weekend of May. So clearly, you know that there would be no ability to do that. Now, when you look at that sponsorship revenue number, 360, 500. The important thing for us from an operational standpoint, so the festival provides some help on educational and arts initiatives in the community. So we give out well over $100,000 every year on that. But to the bottom line of the chamber, we keep $135,000 for operations. So again, keeping the doors open, keeping everyone employed, that was a big chunk of money that at first you think is just going away, because obviously you're not going to have a festival in the middle of a pandemic. So again, we started sort of dissecting different components of the festival up and thinking creatively in how can we deliver different aspects of the festival in a way that still benefits the community, and because this thing has been around forever and kids love it. You can see our mascots there. The schools are involved. There are actual toad races, and kids here do collect toads and race them at the festival. But the first thing that we did was an airplane parade, and you see that picture up there in the middle. That really kicked off festival season for us, and it was really cool. We worked with our pilots association at our airport, which is, it's private aircraft. And they worked with some of their contacts, and we had a really cool airplane parade that had a route that took it across almost all of the city, kind of crisscrossing the city of Conway. And that evening, it was just perfect weather. You could drive anywhere in town and see people in their yards in lawn chairs just watching the airplane parade. And so that was sort of the kickoff. And then we started figuring out how to deliver different pieces of the festival by keeping the sponsors that had originally committed to different parts of the festival. So we have a live entertainment part, we have children's programming, we have the mascots are sponsored. I mean, everything is sponsored. So we started thinking about how do we deliver value to the sponsor in order to keep the money or justify billing for it. So Lindsay, you want to go through some of these other ones here?
Yeah. So the next thing that we, as Brad said, the airplane parade, and just so that you all know, I think that will be something that we will continue moving forward because of the reception that we received from doing this. So we're learning a lot about how being creative is actually helping us to plan for the future, although we still may not know what that looks like. These are good things for us to have gone through in terms of developing programming. We did mascot visits. So if you're looking at the PowerPoint, you'll see our mascots, Croaker and Daisy, for Toadstock Days. They visited one of our local sponsors, Andy's Frozen Custard, and Andy's asked that they would come by and pose with ice cream, which they did. We did not mind, and but that's what Andy's wanted. It was something that they were a sponsor of. Our toad races, which in the bottom left corner of your screen, you'll see some celebrities in our community that were racing toads. And so it just worked out nicely that we could pull the mascots out in a socially distanced way, recognize a sponsor, get in front of local celebrities, and continue to do some of the things that we normally would have done just in a different way. And to give you an idea of why we needed to pull these sponsorships down, the mascots for us would bring in $12,500 worth of revenue. And so it was very important for us to figure out how can we utilize that. So we did a social media contest where people could submit a home visit to someone and to a family in Conway. And by home visit, I mean the mascot stood out beside the car, and the families would come out in the road. They would wave. We would take some pictures in a socially distanced way. We would post those to social media, but we did a couple of visits like that. We also went to a local nursing home. We stood outside of the nursing home. We held signs, but we're getting the mascots out, which you can't see in the female mascot, but she has the t-shirt of one of the sponsors. And the male mascot, he has on the sponsor t-shirt. So again, we're exposing those sponsors. We were getting them out, and it allowed us to bring in $12,000 worth of sponsorship revenue. Additionally, some things that we also did, I don't know how well you can see this. This is called our toter. Typically what we do is we deliver these toters to our local school system, K through 5th grade, and they use these boxes to collect their toads. And since we weren't able to do that this year, we still felt that it was important to do these boxes. One, because these boxes brought in a total revenue of $10,000 in sponsorship. So there's 2 sponsors on this box, $10,000. The boxes are free.
And it's also 100% profitable because International Paper donates the box itself. So we have no cost in it.
Right. And so for us, what we did with these boxes this year is we tied this into, and Brad will talk about this, I think, a little later, but our hashtag Conway to Go program initiative that was actually, I think, the first thing that the Chamber and our Convention and Visitors Bureau started when COVID hit here. For us, we tied that program initiative into these boxes, and this box is a dedication to frontline workers. And so ideally what would happen is a family would go to a local restaurant. This is kind of like a to-go box, Happy Meal box now. They would get this box, and then we would encourage kids to color, or adults could color too, the box, and then post the picture of their completed box on the hashtag Conway to Go social media site. So again, profitable, something that we did not need to get rid of. Additionally, every year at our festival, we would have festival cups. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's a toad with a mask on. And so these cups here, they bring in revenue of $12,500 for us. And so that's 2 sponsors. There you go. But it's actually 3 logos because one of the sponsors has 2 logos. But these cups, again, going to local restaurants, we're not charging the restaurants to purchase the cups, to distribute the cups. We're just asking if they will use these in their restaurant. Now, this is something that we had to pay for, but we're still making money off of it through the sponsorships. And again, something that the sponsors, they were completely on board to continue being a part of this. We also found that some sponsors were, one in particular, they were just happy. They had already budgeted the money to give to the festival, and because of the benefit the festival provides to the arts, STEM education, higher education, etc., they were fine with just making a gift of their sponsorship to the festival without us providing any return, which I think for all of us, we could agree, those are sponsors that we love. And so that was $7,500 that we could keep to Toadstock Days. And we were very grateful for. So I would say this, don't underestimate the ask and the relationship that you've built over time, because we were able to secure one of the 2 co-presenting sponsors of the festival. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like that sponsorship stayed because they believe in the mission of our organization and what we do. At the point that I asked them if they would recommit, I couldn't tell them what we would be doing a month from the time I had asked them. I just asked them to trust us. And I was kind of scared what they were going to say back. And they said, we believe in what you do. We're in, we'll commit. And so that's $30,000. $30,000, which is huge to us. And so obviously the presenting sponsor, we're putting them on everything. And we want to provide the best experience possible. But my point with having said all that is never underestimate the ask and the relationship, because you may be surprised that people want to be more supportive of you, even if they know they're not going to get everything they would have gotten in a 3-day festival weekend like we could have originally provided. Celebrity toad races, I briefly mentioned that. You'll see a picture of that in the bottom left-hand screen of your PowerPoint. Toads are very important to this festival. We worked with our local Museum of Discovery. They did some classes on how to make origami toads. We tied this into another sponsorship with a local tech company here. They agreed to $25,000. That's what they had done in previous years, and they agreed again. There's no way that we could fulfill everything we normally would have done for them, but we did. I would say we probably executed 80% of those things. But they said yes, we're willing to recommit that money to you, and so I'm again very thankful for that. And then lastly, the entertainment piece. Brad, do you want to talk about that? You were more involved with that than I was.
So entertainment obviously is a big sponsorship opportunity for us at a normal festival. So how do you do entertainment during a pandemic when you don't have the festival? So we split entertainment into two ideas. We traditionally had a Sunday faith-based concert that was called Days of Praise. And then we had 2 nights of country or pop artists. And so we went back to people who had played the concert, who had played the festival in the past. And we didn't get any of the really big ones because we didn't ask, but over the history of the festival, we've had a really good track record of getting artists like Blake Shelton, Miranda Lambert, Jason Aldean, Little Big Town, getting them right before they hit big. And so we went back to some people and told them what the situation was and would they do home recordings for us that then we could package into virtual concerts, and everyone said yes. And so we released a Sunday 30-minute concert on network TV, the CBS affiliate in Little Rock. We did that a couple weeks ago. We are doing a primetime event. We already have everything recorded. Now we're working with that same CBS affiliate to get their talent. So a newsman, maybe a weatherman, to host the virtual, they're calling it, the station's calling it Toadstock Days Live. And we're going to use that also to try to raise money for some of the nonprofits that we weren't able to fund this year because we couldn't have the festival. And so it will be almost like a telethon, except you're not going to call and donate money. But for us, we were able to pull down even more sponsorship revenue, and you'll see their total sponsorship revenue for us so far is $144,000. I think we'll eclipse that. If you remember what I said the first time, to the bottom line of the chamber, we need $135,000 net to us to sort of fill those holes. Well, I think we're going to get real close to that, which is just huge. You want to go to the next slide so we can talk about the drive-through event, because I think it's next.
Do you want me to talk about that? Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. And I'll very quickly talk about this because we have a lot more to discuss, but I think this is what I'm most proud of as it relates to Toadstock and what we were able to execute without having a 3-day festival weekend, because of the partnerships that we were able to develop with the people that helped us. And so this was a nature and science drive-through exhibit. We had roughly 3,000 eyeballs is what our Arkansas Game and Fish said came through. If you can believe that. I still can't, but it was pretty incredible to see. We had cars packed with kiddos, and what was happening was our Arkansas Game and Fish, our state parks, and the Museum of Discovery, and the Little Rock Zoo. They came together. They approached us to see if we would be willing to partner with them and host something in Conway for people to do. Because at the time that this was executed, we were pretty much, I'm almost certain, Brad, as a community still shut down. Like not much was opening. And so people were looking for something to do. People with families and young kids, even older kids, they were looking for something to do. And so this was an avenue by which we could provide some type of programming. And so what would happen is we held this on our local college campus, and we worked with their administrators there and the police department to work out a path to send cars through. To give you an idea, this started at 2 o'clock. It was going to run till 6. At 4 o'clock, we started having to tell people that it was closed because there was a 2-hour wait to get to the exhibit part. And believe it or not, there are families that waited for 2 hours to get to the start of the exhibit, which I think speaks volumes for the need and the eagerness of wanting to have something like this. And so it was a 20-minute exhibit, and what was happening was we had Game and Fish brought their large aquarium, so we had fish, we had turtles, we had owls. The Museum of Discovery, they were doing science demonstrations. So lots of activities done in a safe, socially distanced way. People had to stay in their cars. We had zero problem of people getting out and trying to pet the animals or do anything like that. I don't know that it could have gone any smoother other than just having more time to let more people go through. To give you an idea in terms of revenue, so typically during our festival, we would have what's called the Total Kids Zone. And so what we asked was one of the sponsors who had already committed of being a sponsor to that area. In a normal situation, they normally would give $9,000. We asked if they would still be a sponsor, but sponsor this particular event. They agreed, and so we were able to secure $9,000 to do this event. And this event, I'm sorry I don't have the exact number on expense, was very, very minimal because the Game and Fish, the Museum of Discovery, there was no charge to us. The university didn't charge us to use their area. We might have paid for signage, and then that was probably it. So this was very profitable to us as well.
Let's I want to make sure we have enough time to take some questions. Let's skip through the just real quickly on this one. These are some things that we're still trying to work through. We normally do a bowling event. We're going to pivot to a bago event because we think people will be more comfortable being outside. We still have sponsors that are willing to stay with us on this. Next one, Lindsay. Annual meeting for us is huge. That was scheduled to go on April, the first week of April. So we were 2 weeks out. You can see last year we did $208,000. And so we were really counting on that revenue. We have a lot of that revenue in that escrow account. So we are going to pivot and do a virtual awards show. We're going to set it up just sort of like the Oscars, except do it in a 2-hour block on one of our stations in the Little Rock market. So we'll do some paid network time there. And then we are going to do swag boxes for anyone that buys a table or a sponsor that's going to have like legit stuff in there, like wine and craft beer and some other things. And then we're going to encourage those folks to have watch parties in their home to see the event, and then interact with us on social media, showing us what those watch parties look like, what's going on, how they like the swag boxes. And we're also going to try to do an in-person awards luncheon, which we normally do ahead of the actual event, which we can do in a little bit smaller way. Keep going, Lindsay, because I want to talk just briefly about delivering on your mission, because I think right now there are people who will give you money because they value what you do, and they've traditionally given it to you because of an event. But now that you may not be able to have some of those events, you don't need to be shy in asking for that investment that they would have normally given you on an event in order to keep you in business to do some work that is important. And so I wanted to give you some examples of what we've had to do just in the last 4 months that certainly wasn't in a program of work for us. So after the George Floyd tragedy, we, along with city leaders, gathered with members of our Black community to listen. And after having a really good meeting and hearing from them that they wanted the chamber to lead in a very big way, the first thing we did was a Listen Conway campaign, where we took 30 days and picked 30 Black leaders in our community. And this went from high school students all the way up to longtime business leaders in the community. And we featured them on our social media. And it was kind of the only thing we did, where the hashtag was Listen Conway. We also said Black Lives Matter, because they said that was important to them to hear us say that. And we basically told their story about what it's like to be Black in America in 2020, some of their personal recollections of things that most of us might not have believed would have happened to them. And it was very moving. It was very impactful, I think, for our community. We just finished that up a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week. Next slide. That moves into what we will do next in this area. We have heard from many small businesses, so the large businesses in town. Many of them, their employees have had adequate, have had a lot of training on bias and prejudice and diversity, and but small businesses don't. I mean, if you're an owner operator, you may have not had some of this training. And so we were hearing from our small business community, like, we don't know what to do. We want to do the right thing. They're good people. They want to be a part of the conversation, but they don't want to say the wrong thing. And so we reached out to really our largest tech company in town to say, who is the best person or company that can deliver this type of training for us. And they sent us to a contact they had in Silicon Valley, who then told us about this group called the Potential Project that offers this kind of training for Google and Microsoft and all the big names. And so what we asked them was, what would it cost for you to do virtual training for us that we would offer to our small business community for free, so that they then had access to this kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion training that people in big companies probably take for granted. And so we're getting ready to roll this out. We quickly found sponsors for it. It costs quite a bit, but we will make a little bit of money off of that. But this is more missional than it is profit-centered for us, because chambers are uniquely positioned to have a role in leading communities through the time that we're in. And I don't think that you need to be hesitant to do that. Next slide. So Lindsay mentioned Conway to Go. So we also run our Convention Visitors Bureau. And when the shutdown occurred, obviously dine-in service was suspended, which was, a tremendous shock to our restaurant community. So we quickly put up a Facebook page with a hashtag Conway to Go, in which we encourage people to talk about the restaurant community, their favorite restaurant, what they were doing curbside or to go. You can see there that we got 9,500 people involved in that group, and it has been wildly successful. And I will tell you, as president of the organization, I have heard from more restaurants about how impactful this was in the early days of the pandemic. Next slide, this may be it, and then we'll go to questions. Oh, so we're continuing through, we have a visioning process that we do every decade. And this was our anniversary year to redo that and run that for the city. And we're doing that. And our steering committee told us that in spite of everything that's happening, they think it is the absolute best time to go into a visioning process for the community. And so we're leading on that. And these are just examples, I think, of delivering on mission and allowing people to continue to see what you're doing, and there will be people that will invest in you for that reason only. So I think with that, we're going to open it up for some questions, because we got about 10 minutes left.
Okay, thank you, Brad and Lindsay. That's such great information. I'm going to try to see if I can get on screen here again. There you go. All right, thank you so much. That was really awesome information, and we do have some questions. So folks, I'm just going to start. We'll just get through as many as we can, and we'll get back in touch with you if we can't get to your questions. So the first one had to do with your academic event. How much airtime did you purchase from the CBS affiliate for the academic event? Did they provide a promo for their audience to view?
30 minutes, I believe, right, Lindsay?
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't provide anything. We submitted the 30-minute block of time to them. I mean, it was already produced. We hired someone to produce that for us.
Okay. What is the charge to attendees for the Outlook Conway event?
Oh, so typically a ticket is $125. So that would have been the same for login credentials. They would have paid $125 unless they were a sponsor, and then they would have received more login credentials. And that was something we forgot to mention, that for Outlook Conway, each person received unique login credentials. So ideally what we didn't want to have happen was you send me my credentials and then I forward them to everyone in my office.
Right.
But the vast majority of that revenue, I don't think we sold many just single user logins.
Maybe 5 tickets.
But we didn't try either because we already made what we needed to make off the sponsorships.
Okay, got it. When do you plan to have your first in-person event? You did talk about the stadium event.
So if that one is approved, that's what, August 11th, Lindsay?
Yes.
If that one gets approved, we'll go with that on August 11th.
Okay, and then what about, I think you talked about your annual luncheon in smaller, that's in April. So anything in between that time, any other in-person events or?
So the annual meeting, if the question's about the annual meeting, we're targeting October.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But it won't be an in-person event. If you remember from the slide, we're going to do a 2-hour awards show. We're very hesitant about doing inside events. Like, we think we could get approved for some because we're seeing some indoor events approved by the state health department, but we just don't feel as comfortable trying to do that. So if we can do virtual, that's choice number one. But in some cases you can't. And then if we could do an outdoor event, we're going to see how we feel about that.
Okay.
So I would also add that, at that point, when we start looking at doing even indoor or outdoor, weighing the expenses, because if we can't bring in the amount of people that we would need to bring in to cover those or make the amount that we would need to make to pay someone, then does it become worth even executing?
Right. So a question about the teacher event. How did you receive the list of teacher addresses? Did they register or did the school district provide them to you?
So we will be delivering, we don't receive that information. We will be delivering those bags to the administration offices for each school, and then they will distribute those bags to the teachers. And those teachers will be asking for those bags. They love getting those gift bags. So I'm not worried at all about the educators getting the bag. Okay.
Back to your annual meeting. Are you getting the swag for the boxes donated? Are you purchasing them? Now, that's the first question. And the second question is, what platform will you be using for the show?
So on the swag, obviously, we spend probably $30,000 maybe on food, maybe a little bit more for the in-person event. So we're going to have some budget available. We're starting the discussion with our largest sponsors to see if they're on board to do the different annual meeting. We started with the 2 big ones, so We have two 25,000. Is it 25 or 15?
15 and 15. It's 2 15s right now.
2 15s. So both of them are yeses. And we got a couple of $10,000 ones that have said yes. So when we get down below the $5,000 level, if we've retained what I think we will, then we'll say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this. Some of the stuff, so like the wine for the in-person event was all donated. Well, it's sitting in our hallway because we didn't get to have the event. So each of those swag boxes will have, you know, a couple bottles of wine, some beer will get donated. So I think it's going to be a mix. We'll have some donated stuff, but then we will go buy some things because we really want them to be, I mean, it's not going to be trinkets. It's not going to be like koozies and things like that. It's going to be stuff that people would really want. Some of it might be food. It may be like some custom desserts for the night. And so that's what we'll end up with. What was the second question?
And then the second question, really for that event and your other virtual events, what platform or platforms are you using?
So we will produce most of them, we will produce the entirety of the event. We'll hire somebody to do that. So we'll just deliver that to the television station and they'll air it. With Outlook, you want to talk about how we did Outlook, Lindsay?
What?
I said it was web-based, right? We created a website for it.
Yes, but we hired a company, a local company, to develop that for us. And I would be happy to get that contact information to the person asking the question, because it's pretty turnkey for them now. But they created the website. They even helped us with some of the filming. And so we were able to just give that all to them, and then they were able to develop out the platform.
And do you have a cost for for that platform, or for them developing it?
Well, for Outlook, I think it was around $8,000, and that was discounted because we listed the company as I believe it was a technology sponsor, something along those lines. So it would have been a little more, but again, you also have to remember too, they appreciate the business as well, because things have slowed down for everybody. And so just the ability to be able to show that they could do something like this, I think was good for them. And it helped us out with expenses too. So yes.
We're supposed to be able to use it for other things too in the future, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. So yes, it was expensive, but we were still under budget for expenses. And I'm talking about Outlook Conway than we would have been.
Okay.
Because we cut out a lot of other things.
Okay. I had a question about the Black Lives Matter. Have you featured Black Lives Matter previous to your 30 days featuring your Black community? And if not, how was it perceived? They said they're worried about going from 0 to 100.
So to give you a little background on that, the mayor and the pastor of our largest predominantly African American church pulled together business leaders, civic leaders, education leaders, and faith leaders for a meeting. And in that meeting, as I alluded to, it became evident that members of the Black community in Conway expected the chamber to lead in certain ways. And we collectively, from city leaders to university leaders, that day agreed that phrase was important. Like, that was important to recognize. We understood that there would be people that wouldn't agree with that. But we are not we are accustomed to at times saying things that people don't agree with and not being held hostage by a couple of folks. I think you have to be willing to lose some folks in order to maybe do the right thing sometimes. And we believe that doing the right thing is the most important thing. And so We've had a couple of negative comments about saying that, and I feel confident that we defend ourselves very well on it. And what I will tell somebody is I will tell them about that meeting that night and what members of our Black community told us, and our Black businesses told us, and our Black elected officials told us, and they told us that that was important for us to say that. And we had a march, we had a local march, and we have 4 people of color on our staff, and we marched with them, and we held signs that said Black Lives Matter. And I understand that it's hard maybe for some people to do, and that it's scary, and that it's going to offend some people. And I think it probably depends on your community, but I still think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Well, that is a great answer to end on, and you guys just are awesome. Thank you so much for what you're doing for your community, and for sharing your insights today. We really appreciate it. There were some questions we didn't get to, and I will see Brad and Lindsay if you could possibly reach out to those folks, and I'll send them to you.
Sure.
So for everyone, thank you for participating. We really appreciate your participation, your thoughtful questions. Just a reminder that the webinar was recorded, and I will post the recording hopefully tomorrow along with the slides. The slides have Brad and Lindsay's contact information on them, and I will post the handouts as well. So thanks again, everyone. Wishing everyone a wonderful afternoon, and we will see you on the next ACCE webinar. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.